They had an interesting event down in Houston this week. It's called SpaceCom, Space Commerce Conference and Exposition. And joining us to talk about that here on the program, author and I think one of the presenters down there as well. Joining us on the show, Scott Jucha. Hello, Scott. How are you?
I'm fine, Chad. Thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Appreciate you taking your time to give us a call today. And this was the first SpaceCom event, correct?
Correct. It was the first time that we've seen an exposition that brought together both the government agency and private enterprise. I mean, the process has begun for years now, but this exposition is just the first time that we see this put up on a public platform, if you would.
What are some of the things that I guess were presented and what went on? Because there's always this, or it seems as though when you hear about things like this and the mission to Mars and then even movies that come out, there's always a bump in interest when it comes to space. And I know that there are a lot of companies out there who are also getting more and more interested in space, correct?
Yeah, I think, Chad, if you just back up to one step further in this process and look at space agencies, you'd be shocked to discover that 50 years ago you primarily had two, the Russians and us.
Right.
And now, if you were to Google on space agencies, you come up with a full dozen. And it's shocking to realize the number of countries that have produced agencies that want to get into this. And in addition, the massive number of companies that want to get into this process as well. And you've got, this transfer of technology that's been happening from NASA to private companies for years. And now you actually have a two-way street going on. I mean, NASA invested in the recruitment of commercial partners, SpaceX and Orbital ATK, to deliver space vehicles into low Earth orbit and the ISS. And they started that in 2006, I believe. And that was 5 years before the Space Shuttle program was even retired in 2011. So we see a lot of this private enterprise to NASA and back and forth, as well as now space agencies hooking up, such as the NASA and Israeli agreement.
What do you think the future looks like for these agencies, for companies in the United States and space exploration?
Well, I think you alluded to it earlier when you talked about the headlines, that there's this bump that happens when, the Martian comes out, or a movie or something else. But that's when the media's headlines are capture the attention of the public. But the NASA and private enterprise within the U.S. has been quietly pursuing innovation across a multiple number of disciplines, and all of these are designed to advance space exploration. And fortunately, the innovations are often on those, mundane scientific things where if someone started to talk and explain about them, everybody would be asleep in 3 minutes, right? But so they don't garner the public's attention, but they have been significant steps nonetheless. I mean, when you realize that everything that we did since the 60s in the space program was done by one agency, and now that agency literally has stepped back from the process of rockets and had been using Russian rockets to get to the International Space Station, but wants to eliminate the Russian delivery system by 2017 by using our own technologies and our own companies in a combination of Boeing and SpaceX. And I think that's very strong positive moves for the process of space exploration.
We're talking about SpaceCom, which was down in Houston this week, ended yesterday, I believe. And Scott, what did you take away from SpaceCom?
Well, first of all, a small correction. I wasn't a presenter, and I wasn't there at it. I was actually up in L.A. for on awards for one of my audiobooks. But the the essence of what I took away is the fact that someone, in terms of this exposition, has seen the light that it's time to start putting a myriad number of companies together along with the space agency, a huge range of presenters. And if you look at the individuals that were there, their credentials are enormous. You see that this interest in space is growing all the way across the board. It's not just, well, are we going to go to Mars or not? It's how are we going to do it? What's the value? What's the bottom line? Can we make money at it? And when you realize we used to do things like bring the moon rocks back 40 years ago and analyze them, and now you have a group like ESA, which is the European Space Agency, landing Philae on an asteroid and doing work to sample with mass spectrometry and send it back. And we're doing the same with the rover technology on Mars.
Right.
You discover that you are making huge advancements across all processes. Get the equipment there, analyze it, send it back electronically, digitally. That's massive technology changes. And when you realize that the sampling of things up there, one of the ones that popped in my mind, I was looking at it, and it was FeTiO3, or iron titanium trioxide, and I'm sitting there going, wow, that ore contains titanium? That's one of the most valuable elements that we use in the construction of spacecraft and so many other high-end equipment, and it's sitting there on the moon and on Mars. Okay, who wants to mine that?
Right. Yeah, no, there's a lot of innovation out there, and it's something that I think that as we continue the process and continue to see the innovation, more and more people, I think, will be swinging around to becoming more interested in space travel, space innovation, and what's going on in space, which is pretty cool, in my opinion.
I agree. I think it's going to be a huge economic engine. It's got to be started, so that means capital in the beginning, but it's going to be a huge economic engine globally, and I would hope that the U.S. is a primary leader in it.
You would hope so. Well, hopefully we'll see that. Scott Jucha, appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much, Chad, for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Have a good one out there.
Thank you.
770-5790, toll-free, 1-800-687-0790. Be a cool event to go to. See how some of the private corporations out there are coming up with different innovations for space travel and for exploration. A lot of people, a lot of big people, big corporations were involved in this down in the Houston area. Pretty sure it'll be one that continues to build.